there's a clear recognition that there's not enough spectrum to just run all of this data through macrocellular networks. So the thing that will be the solution, that solutions are going in place today and solutions for the future are multi-layer networks. Networks that include macrocellular coverage for ubiquitous coverage, microcellular coverage for some of the hotspots and hot zones or dead spots in the network where they're shadowing, and then a good bit of Pico and Wi-Fi offload, because most of what we're seeing happening in the network today is a transformation from walking and talking to sitting and watching. A lot of the traffic that's being driven into the network is really being driven by things like Netflix and YouTube and Pandora and things like that, streaming content.
We're moving away from days of coverage being the priority to really delivering capacity. And the challenge is looking at doing it differently so that we better utilize all our resources. The resource being the radios, the backhaul, all the expense that goes into the build of these networks. And so when you really look at the challenge, you need to deliver more capacity to smaller areas, if you will, to be able to deliver the data rates that you need to. But you also want to look at, you know, as mentioned by our colleague from NSN, how do you efficiently use that capacity so that you're not stranding it? More of your traditional methods of building wireless networks really were built around the concept of building sites. And each site would be a limited set of capacity and coverage. Really, we need to look at expanding these networks so that you can unlock your coverage and your capacity, and you can deliver that capacity when and where needed, and not have a lot of idle resources in the network.
It's no secret out there that the people spending money are the people doing LTE, long-term evolution, 4G installation, and that being the Verizons and the AT&Ts of the world, with Metro PCS doing some LTE also. So anytime there's a technology change, one of the things that the carriers and the tower companies do is what's the impact on the tower company and the tower company's revenue. You heard a presentation a moment ago about the cube, and there were headlines all over the trade pubs and even in some of the regular newspapers how the cube is going to make monopoles obsolete. All tower companies will go away, and you won't ever have to put up antennas anymore or deal with rooftops and monopoles. And that's not really what's going to happen. I mean, there's the technology is good. The technology is going to evolve over the years, but the tower companies are going to be there because you're going to need the infrastructure to put the antenna on or to put the cube on.
Backhaul is a big thing. Site acquisition is a big thing. You know, folks are installing microcells on lampposts and telephone poles and things like that. The challenges of getting rights to those poles is bigger than any cellular operator can imagine, I believe. You know, the Muni Wi-Fi folks went through this half a decade ago when they looked at all of the challenges of getting to lamp poles. And it's, okay, you now hang the thing on the lamp pole, so now how do you get backhaul there? Can you bring a fiber up to the lamp pole? Perhaps you can, perhaps you can't. If you can't, then you have to have a wireless means of doing the backhaul out of your site. If you do just a remote radio head and you're bringing traffic from a radio back to centralized baseband, have you considered how much more traffic that entails than if you had your baseband at the site and you're running Ethernet to it? There are a lot of pragmatic things you have to look at when you look at all of these sites.
So the carriers are really looking at how can they efficiently build out their networks to handle this big surge in capacity. And they really have a need to do that because that's their now reputation, the speed, the reliability of the network, the ability to get these apps when and where needed. And when you really look at some of the options, it was interesting, a lot of the next generation technologies where you have cube technologies, if you will. The DAS technologies are there today, and we're deploying these networks with a lot of our partners in the room today, a lot of the tower companies, a lot of the existing companies, where you're taking that capacity and you're distributing it over multiple points and really getting that capacity when and where needed.
If you're a nationwide carrier in the United States, the rules that apply in New York are quite different from the rules that apply in California or Texas. What you can do in different municipalities is quite different. So it's not an either-or thing. It's going to be a combination of all of the above. Macro cells, micro cells, pico cells, DAS units, outdoor DAS, indoor DAS. I mean, it's a combination of all.
The one thing we know for certain is that there will be change. So there will be the next protocol. There will be the next new, better, because there has to again, to address the scarcity of spectrum, to address the need for higher bandwidth. And so any of the systems that you really look at need to have that flexibility built into them. So, you look at a DAS system. It's independent of the area interface. It's independent of multiple factors. That allows you to put a new service, a new offering on that precious frequency asset that you own.